The international community tries to push rival sides in South Sudan to the negotiating table, but increasing reports of ethnically based killings raises fears that it may be too late. So, will more UN soldiers be able to save the world's newest nation from an all-out civil war? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Folly Bah Thibault. In a little more than a week, the world's newest country seems to be unraveling. What started as a power struggle between the president of South Sudan, Salva Kiir, and his former deputy, MACHAR, has spread and become a fight between rival ethnic groups, the Dinka and the Nuer. The UN says that the violence over the last week has already claimed more than 1,000 lives. Many more have fled the fighting and are seeking refuge in crowded UN camps. The UN is now promising more resources and peacekeepers to protect civilians and stop the bloodshed. An additional 5,500 UN soldiers would be sent to boost the 7,000 already in the country. The UN Secretary General says the reinforcements would come from other UN missions already in Africa. But will it be enough? Well, to discuss this further, let's bring in our guests. In London, Choul Laam, he's Chief of Staff for the Secretary General of the ruling Sudan People's Liberation Movement. And from Oxford in the UK, we have scholar and author Douglas Johnson, who has written several books on South Sudan, including The Root Causes of Sudan's Civil War. Gentlemen, thank you both for being on Inside Story today. Douglas Johnson, if I may start with you and the latest developments. We know that the United Nations has a large peacekeeping force in the Democratic Republic of Congo, one of the largest in the world, and yet it took a long time, and it's taking a long time to bring back stability to the east of the DRC. Do you think more UN troops in South Sudan will make a difference when you have so many actors operating on the ground there?
I think that more UN troops would be useful, but their deployment is the important aspect. They can only be deployed if they are deployed with the active agreement of the forces involved. South Sudan is a very large country. It's as big as Western Europe. Its communication system is rudimentary. In Jonglei state right now, it's the end of the rainy season, beginning of the dry season. The roads are not going to be passable. Troops can only be deployed really by air. They are outnumbered and outgunned by the forces that are currently fighting. If they are to protect civilians, that's one aspect of their mandate. If they are to impose between the fighting groups, then those groups have to be brought into a negotiation and agree to the deployment of the UN troops.
It is true that it's unclear what mandate these peacekeepers will have exactly once they're deployed in South Sudan. Choul Laam in London. South Sudan is, of course, where you're from. You left last week, I understand, under some difficult circumstances. Tell me first, do you think more foreign troops in South Sudan will make a difference? Will it ease the tensions?
Well, at the moment, I believe that it is dissolution of hostilities. Ceasefire should be our main focus at this time, and also make sure that the situation is contained and is diffused. I believe that the foreign troops, if they come, they could protect the UN staff, they could protect the civilian, but they're still also going to be in danger, in great danger, if the situation is not contained. Now, we need to bring the actors to a negotiation table. That is President Kiir, as well as former Vice President MACHAR. They need to come to sit down and discuss. And then their situation is very difficult. It's difficult for President Kiir and also very difficult for Vice President MACHAR. And they need to be linked. And I believe that the detainees could be the link between the two. They could try to reason, and despite their political differences, they could come together for the sake of the country, for the civilian, for the cause of what they fought for the last 30 years. They could put all their differences aside, and they could come together to save the country.
Right. Well, MACHAR, the former vice president, has said that he's ready to negotiate with Salva Kiir if his political allies are released from jail. But when he spoke to Al Jazeera, MACHAR also insisted that the president would have to give up his power. Let's listen.
Oh, definitely it is easy. The SPLM is the ruling party, and the SPLM is the national army. And I believe these two organizations, the ruling party and the National Army, can end the term of Salva Kiir. Salva Kiir has failed to unite the people. He is inciting inter-ethnic fighting. Now he's dividing the country, so it's best he leaves. And I believe the SPLA and the SPLM can make him leave.
Dr. MACHAR, if Salva Kiir does go, do you want to take his place? Do you want to be president of South Sudan?
Well, not necessarily, but I had told the SPLM that come the next SPLM convention, I contest for the chairmanship of the SPLM and also and be the flag bearer for the 2015 elections.
So the answer is yes, you would like to be the next president?
Well, yes, if you want to cut it short.
So, RIEK MACHAR wants to be the next president of South Sudan. Choul Laam in London, given what we've just heard, do you think Salva Kiir will ever agree to his condition that he release political detainees, that he release RIEK MACHAR's allies in order to start negotiating? Will he agree to that, do you think?
You know, I would like to say that this is the foundation. Both leaders, President Kiir, former Vice President MACHAR, and all the political detainees, these are forefathers of the country. These are men who fought for years, and they fought to liberate the country and for a democratic country that will be raised based on the Constitution. Now, if we look into this very carefully, we would realize that the Constitution of South Sudan is the rule and it's the law that we need to protect and we need to serve. Based on that, President Kiir is the country president, and he has been elected by the people. He has the term that he has based on our Constitution until 2015. Now, there is means of democratic way to change the president, but it's not through arms. So I will urge former Vice President RIEK MACHAR to retract the call of overthrowing President Kiir and retract from calling the party, whether militarily or through the party, to try to overthrow President Kiir.
Douglas Johnson.
Even if
yes, go on. Finish your thought.
There's a point that I would like to make, which is very, very important, that regardless who comes to power, whether it's now or whether it is in 2015, we have to observe the Constitution. We have to make sure that people follow the rule of law. So regardless of whether it's violence or not violence, we need to be careful of how do we move on.
Well, the rule of law certainly doesn't seem to have been respected in South Sudan over the last week. We've heard of numerous civilian casualties, civilians being targeted, given their ethnic origin and so on. Douglas Johnson, if I can ask you, we've seen rebellions and reconciliation. They're very common in South Sudan. It's not the first time. Mr. Kiir and Mr. MACHAR have a long history of squabbles followed by deals afterwards. Do you think they'll step back from their current confrontation and agree to a deal and reach a settlement, or do you think it's very different this time around?
I think it's very much possible for them to step back, both of them to step back, but I think that it's important for the people around them to encourage them to do so. It's not something that people from outside South Sudan can come in and mediate if the people within each of these camps are not willing to sit down and talk. Now, yes, there have been splits in the past before, and yes, RIEK MACHAR was on one side and Salva Kiir was on the other side before. Perhaps this is a settling of old scores. I do not know if that is the case, but I think that given the fact that we've had 6 or 7 years now of relative peace and calm within South Sudan, a very successfully held democratic referendum, people in South Sudan are looking forward to peace and stability, and they expect their leaders to be responsible for that. So it's not just the outside that should be urging between them. I think people within each of these groups must be laying down the foundation so that their leaders can get together and talk.
You talk of the outside, and we're seeing a lot of steps right now being taken by the international community and East African leaders to bring these two sides together. What kind of leverage do you think the outside world has to get them to talk and agree to a settlement?
Well, the outside world does have considerable leverage because South Sudan has received considerable international support diplomatically, economically, and militarily from its neighbors, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda, as well as from European countries and Western countries like the United States. And without that sort of support, the country will be very difficult for them to advance. You also have China, which has considerable economic interest in South Sudan, and without that development, South Sudan is not going to be able to develop economically.
Right, and I was going to say, South
leverage.
Sudan, of course, is an oil-producing region. When you mentioned China, it came to mind that, you know, this is an oil-producing region. How much of a factor do you think that's playing right now in what's happening and what's going to happen?
I don't think it is a motivating factor. It has now become a complicating factor because the production of oil from the Unity fields have been shut down. The only engineers that were available to run those oil wells have been withdrawn. RIEK has made a bid to get Khartoum's involvement by saying that he will share the revenues with Khartoum. I think that's a very dangerous statement for him to have made. It's inviting Khartoum to intervene. That's not going to go down well with other people in South Sudan. As I said, it's a complicating factor, but I do not think that that was the motivating factor in this current confrontation.
Okay, Choul Laam, you know, in the last week we've heard many reports of people being targeted because of their ethnic origin. The violence has left more than 100,000 people displaced, and we've spoken to some of these people affected by the violence. Let's listen to what they have to say, and I'll ask you more about the circumstances under which you left South Sudan yourself just a few days ago. Let's take a listen first.
Supposed to leave South Sudan because we really work very hard for South Sudan to become independent through song, through anything. For now, if the situation is still going bad like that, I cannot even go back. If there's a way for example, for the United Nations to give us another place, and then it's better for me to live there because there's a very bad situation in our area. I cannot even go back.
The two factions should be reconciled by the international community so that the problem is solved once and for all, so that everyone can go back to where they came from. We can't live like this.
You can find a lot of bodies all over the place. So I had my cousin over there. It's not even being buried right now. And I had just a lot of friends that I've been there with them for a couple of days. Now they're all gone.
So, Choul Laam, tell us more about the circumstances under which you left South Sudan. And do you think that a conflict along ethnic lines can be averted, or is it too little too late now?
You know, I could tell you how I left South Sudan, but I believe that now we should really focus into the solution of the problem.
Right.
Now, there could be a lot of people like in my condition that could leave South Sudan, and also
but
there could be a lot of refugees leaving South Sudan. You know, I was saying that there could be a lot of people going to be feeling threatened if the violence escalates. There could be camps, refugee camps in Uganda, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, but that does not help anybody. The violence is in nobody's interest, and we should try to diffuse it. We're trying to contain it. We should try to bring the parties to the table. We need for them to discuss and find a political way. Now, those men who might be carrying arms, whether they support President Kiir or they support former Vice President MACHAR, these are men who have children, they have families, they have more of a stake, and they deserve peace. They deserve more reconciliation. They want to farm. They want to have roads. They want to have communication. They want to have skyscrapers. These are people that have been suffering for years and years and years. And it's in the international community's stake to try to make sure that South Sudan have peace. Yet now, a few days ago, the UN Secretary General appealed to the UN to have 6.5 billion for Syria. Now, is the international community really ready for another refugee camp or another disaster in another country? No, I don't think it's in anybody's interest, neither the two leaders. Now, as a leader, you have followers. You have people that will listen to you. And this should be the call of the former vice president of his people, that please, let's have peace. Please lay your arms.
Okay.
Let's have discussion. And the same thing for President Kiir.
We hear your message.
This is the time for leadership and to get above the differences.
We hear your message. Well, let's bring in now a new guest with us now, an Inside Story from Nairobi, Ms. Rebecca Garang, who's the widow of John Garang, who was the chairman of the SPLM, the rebel movement that signed a peace deal with the Sudanese government in 2005, a deal that eventually led to South Sudan's independence. Ms. Garang has also served as an advisor to the president of South Sudan, Salva Kiir. Ms. Garang, thank you very much indeed for being on Al Jazeera and joining us on this program. The Sudanese information minister said a few days ago that you were under house arrest in Juba. You are now in Nairobi. Did you not feel safe in Juba anymore?
When this problem took place on Sunday and then until Monday morning, as you were saying, the information minister went on the TV saying that he counted the name of the people who are arrested, plus Madame Rebecca, but she's in house arrest in her house. The situation when I left now Juba at least was calm. There are shooting here and there, but I came for some reasons. I was not feeling very well, and also my children here were really panicking because of what is going on in Juba. And you know, there were so many rumors going around, and then they don't differentiate between rumors and really what is the reality.
Right, but were you not among those who were accused of plotting this coup?
Juba is not safe for me because, yes, I was accused, and they said that I was part of a group who plot the coup, but I don't believe in that.
Okay. So how do you think today that this violence can be stopped? What's the solution to ending the crisis that we've seen in the last week, in your opinion?
The solution would be for the two leaders to commit themselves to dialogue. Is very, very important. For President Salva Kiir and Dr. RIEK MACHAR to commit themselves to dialogue, because they must always look behind, because you must have people who follow you, and you cannot be a leader without the followers, and these are the people you lead. But what we are doing in Juba right now, we are not leading anywhere. We are managing crisis. This is what is going on in Juba now. So we need pressures from the region. We need pressures from international communities to bring both sides to negotiation. And as the situation calm in Juba, those groups who are in prison should be released, so that they can also join hands with the two leaders, so that they can bring the situation in Juba to arrest.
Well, let's now hear where both sides stand on negotiations. Joining us on the line from Juba is the Information Minister for South Sudan, MAKUEI. Thank you very much, Mr. MAKUEI, for being on Inside Story. RIEK MACHAR has said that he will only sit down and negotiate with President Salva Kiir if his political allies are released, the people who have been arrested in the last few days in South Sudan. Is that a condition that the president is likely to agree to?
Even though we have not yet received his official response, we are hearing that his condition is putting preconditions for the dialogue, and this is not acceptable. We will not be ready to dialogue with anybody with preconditions.
So are you saying that the political prisoners, the people who have been arrested, will not be released then?
Definitely they will not be released.
Why are these people under arrest, sir?
RIEK MACHAR is not the only people he has. He has so many followers, including those who escaped with him. So he has every right to send a delegation that he can lead, or any other person, but not necessarily those who are under arrest. By the way, for your information, there is no way we can release anybody charged of an attempted coup.
Okay.
These people and RIEK MACHAR attempted the coup and it failed, and they ran away, and we managed to apprehend these people who are now under arrest.
So
there is no way we can encourage such a thing. Otherwise, we would be setting a bad precedent for the Republic of South Sudan.
So if that is the case, then, is there a point in dialoguing with Mr. MACHAR, who says that he won't sit down until these people are released? And there seems to be a lot of mistrust between the two sides. Can you really sit down and negotiate a settlement with Mr. MACHAR? Or are you going to arrest him if you...
We are ready to sit down with Mr. MACHAR without conditions. The fact that he is making it a condition for the release of his arrested colleagues is not acceptable, because it is a precondition.
Okay. Can I ask you this? There are more and more reports emerging of alleged ethnic killings in South Sudan, reports of MAKUEI people being shot by the security forces. Is your government investigating these reports, and will those responsible be held accountable?
It is unfortunate that Madam Rebecca, who was allowed yesterday to goes to Juba, goes there, and from there she reports that there is insecurity in Juba. There was no insecurity, and this is why she was allowed to go. That is one. There is nothing as such. All these are allegations being created by people who are out to support the group that committed the coup, that the group which is part and parcel of the military coup. And for that matter, if anybody wants to confirm, he is welcome to come to Juba, come and confirm whether there are any atrocities being committed or there are any killings. What we know is that RIEK MACHAR and his group are the ones killing people now in all the other parts, in all the areas which they have occupied.
Right, but there are also reports that suggest that the security forces have been involved also in targeted killings. Thank you very much for speaking to us. We're going to leave it there with you. Thank you very much for your time and speaking to us on Inside Story. Ms. Rebecca Garang in Nairobi, if I can just ask you to respond to what we just heard from the South Sudanese Information Minister. Do you agree with what he says?
What is happening in the state is what we are talking about now, that both sides should be sitting down so that they can dialogue to save the situation of the civilian in the state. Secondly, it does not need to move to other states if people sit down. This one is a reality. If they say that people are going to sit down and negotiate, and if these people are not released, who's going to negotiate with them?
Right.
So this group are not part of what Dr. MACHAR is claiming. For example, Dr. MACHAR, when he was vice president, he talked about he himself to be the next president of Southern Sudan coming 2015. He has been talking about it. But what the groups and even myself were talking about was a reform within the party. We were not happy with the constitution of the party. So we were saying that this constitution has to be democratized so that the constitution is not every time amended. We need to make a constitution. I even gave example of a constitution of United States of America, which is 200 years plus. And it has been amended maybe 10 times. Only 10 times that the Constitution of America has amended. What happened with our constitution? Constitution is being cut to size of individuals, not the size of people of Southern Sudan or future generations
South Sudan
to come.
is
so
a new
the
country
groups in
that's
the prison
facing
are very different. Or what they're saying.
This new country is definitely facing a lot of challenges. Mr. Johnson in London, I'll just give you the last word. Do you think that peace talks can resolve this crisis?
I don't think that the crisis can be resolved any other way than starting some sort of dialogue. I also think that the dialogue must be as inclusive as possible, and not just between the two figureheads of the government and the opposition. I believe that there are a number of issues that Madam Rebecca touched on that a number of people, both within the party and outside of the party, are concerned about, and the sooner that those issues are addressed seriously by a wide constituency, a wide network of concerned people within South Sudan, the better.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. Douglas Johnson in Oxford, Choul Laam in London, and Ms. Rebecca Garang in Nairobi, Kenya. And thank you as well for joining us. If you want to send your feedback, just email us your thoughts at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Thanks for watching.